Barbecue.
Well, hello again. This is Mike Siver with Ernest Spencer. In the last episode, the last part one, we just talked about the sponge, and the name of the book that I've written, and they're available for people that are interested, is called "Why Did I Do That?" And the sponge is a chapter in the book that tells us how children absorb what they see and hear around them. We all know that. But I don't think as parents we pay much attention to what they really do. And then we wonder why they do things that they do. And we ask them, why did you do that? And if that's not addressed or they're not talked about as they grow, and some of those inappropriate things they saw and learned unintentionally, but they learned them, then they start asking themselves, why did I do that? And unless they have some knowledge where it comes from in the past, they're going to keep asking that question even when they get in trouble. The next chapter we're going to talk about is the early years. And this is a lead into a couple scenarios we're going to talk about parenting and why did I do that. And it says, as discussed earlier in Sponge, in the chapter of Sponge, children see, hear, and take in everything that goes on around them. In many cases, it can be humorous, like cussing at the dog the way Dad does, and for making a mess in the house. Or sometimes it can be a little frightening, like a 5-year-old using a knife in a power outlet the way Dad did when he used a screwdriver. Children very young don't know the difference between a screwdriver, a table knife, or any kind of thing. As long as it's got a flat edge,
Right, it fits.
it fits, they're going to do it. And there's been some children seriously hurt because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't and I know I didn't growing up, because I worked on, I'm one of those handymen around the house, and I would change an outlet if it broke or whatever I'd do, and my kids would watch. Luckily, they never followed me
Right.
and did what I did, but they could have, and I know they saw what I did. We would like to help you understand in this book a far more serious situation that we call environmental situational learning. And I'm going to talk about that a lot through the book.
Okay.
And it's children learn in the environment they're in, and they learn that in a situational setting. And we're going to do some scenes here about parenting and fatherhood. But what it says, as children grow, they typically learn all they need to know, and we talked about this earlier, how to act as adults by the time they're 9 or 10 years old.
Right.
Or maybe 12 today, I don't know, maybe even earlier now.
Earlier today.
And it may even be younger than that. What we are talking about here involves only the learning of behaviors and not the traditional academic learning. That occurs in school. There's a separate topic for another time and place. I mean, children know how to act as an adult by the time they're 10 or 12 years old.
You just said something that's real important. You said by 10 or 12, but maybe now, 7 or 8. I saw a young lady in a program I'm involved in, and she came to me because she know I do so much work with kids. And she said, my son is like 10, 11, and him and this girl are texting each other online.
Oh, wow.
They talking about kissing each other. I say, today, 10 and 11 is a new 16.
Yeah.
Because of the way they have access to materials and the internet, they can say tell their phone anything they want, and it'll give it to them. I mean, you Google almost anything on your phone, and it comes up.
And it's dangerous, but it's there, it's not going to change. We have to figure out what we're going to do about it.
Right.
And parents, it's hard because children today don't have the boundaries we had when we were growing up.
You're correct.
They don't have the boundaries. And, my mom, to discipline me, because I was the only boy in a family of 5 girls. Well, my mom and 4 sisters. So I got some serious discipline.
Right.
because I was always out of control. And I didn't have a dad around, he took off.
Right.
So she used to take my belt from me, tell me, Mike, give me your belt. And she'd smack me with that belt. I will say she never used the buckle end.
Right.
She'd double it over and let me have it.
I got a few of them.
And then she'd give it back to me and say, here's your belt back. I put that on. I never thought once about calling the police.
Or not giving her the belt.
Or not giving her the belt. And I can't, today I have a hard time why that went away. What was so bad? I know there's some abusive parents out there, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But we're getting off the track here.
No, but you're on a good track. Keep
But
going.
yeah, I think we are at some point. But what are children learning? Children are learning today that they can't control or discipline their children.
Right. And they're learning that they think the system has allowed them to be in control in some senses.
Yeah.
And then that same system wants to punish them later. I had a daughter, my middle daughter was a terror. And I remember going to the school and said, sit her in the corner, put a dunce hat on her, smack her on her butt, do something. He was like, we can't do that and neither can you.
Yeah.
I said, okay, if you call me to the school one more time, because what was my pushing point was, she came home one day, she had touched and hit, swung on a teacher. And I went to my son and my older daughter and say, it wasn't right at no point, but is the teacher one of them kind of teachers? They say, nope. I said, what kind of teacher is? She said, pick one of your grandmothers. And at that point, I lost my mind.
Right.
Okay? And I said, if y'all call me one more time, I'm gonna whoop her behind right here in the school. And they said, we'll call the police. I said, you can call the police, protective service, whoever you want. But don't tell me at 5 I can't discipline them, and then at 15 you blaming me for them stealing cars and doing the stuff.
Yeah. And that's part of what this book is about. Why did I do that?
Right.
Children today are powerful, and they know it.
Yes, they do.
That's the sad part, or the
Yes.
hard part. I don't know. Maybe I'm old school, but I can't see where that's good.
Me either.
I can't see where that's benefiting the child to grow up. I think the educators today, or the people that make those decisions, that say that, just are praying that the kids, if you're nice to them, they'll learn.
Right, and that's not how they learn today.
Well, listen to the news. There's shootings and murders every day.
And I have a rule, and I don't care if anyone agrees with it or not. My grandchildren, and I did it with my children, when they get 3 years old, if I scream their name or call them and tell them to come to me, and they don't, I punish them, I discipline them. The reason being, that's the age when they dart out into the street.
Yeah.
That's when they do stuff. I watch the kid run in front of a car and get run over.
Right.
Because his mama kept calling him, he don't come back. So my children, and even my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren now, when I got after her, because she just turned 3, and we were outside, and I got after her, mother said, well, he told you. I tell them, because it'll save their life. You can't do that anymore. You can't. It was a joking thing. My aunt, it was funny. She scoot you next to the street, push you in the street. Then she hit you one time. Said, I told you about being in the street. And then she'd stand you back on the sidewalk, scoot you over again, real gentle. She did that about 5 times. The hit never hurt, And then, but I look back and none of me or my first cousins have ever been hit by a car, and it was 40 of us.
Yeah.
And Aunt Bobby did that with all of us. So it was a form of discipline, but it wasn't physical. But it made me know not to go on the street.
Well, that's the thing today. I don't think parents know what they can do.
They don't.
I don't think parents know what they can or cannot do. And I know there's a thin line between spanking and abuse.
Right.
And how you do it and what you do it with. And I'm all in favor of not abusing children. Don't get me wrong.
Me too.
I think there's a place for some serious discipline. What parents, I think, forget, and what gets them in trouble, is the discipline has to be age appropriate and related to the incident.
Right.
So we've come up in parts of the book, it has consequences for actions. And I've tried to get parents to change the word, and we talked about this some time ago, from punishment, try and get rid of the word punishment, and its consequences for your actions.
Yep, I remember we talked about that.
We talked about that before, and you do that, you do that. But what we're talking about now is about environmental situational learning.
Yeah.
About how children learn that certain people can behave in certain ways. And a good example is that, and we talked about this a couple of shows ago, was when I run groups of adults and men mostly, sometimes they'll start to swear or cuss.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, I don't want to have swearing or cussing in my groups because we have to keep it to a higher level than that.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, well, that's the way I talk, it's the way I do. So I said, that's fine. Then we're going to have the next group in the church. We're going to go to a church and have our next groups in churches from now on. And they'll say, well, I don't want to do that because I can't cuss in church.
That would be the point.
I said, why did you learn that? Well, they learned somewhere down the road environmental situational learning. In that situation, in that environment, which is in church, you can't cuss.
Right.
That sunk in.
Mm-hmm.
Every adult that I know today knows you don't cuss in church.
Right.
And that's transitioning from there, because it's so ingrained in adults. Most children today know that.
Right.
When you go into a church, you behave a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Environmental situational learning. Why does it have to be so specific?
Right.
So we talk about in this particular scene of a father who on his certain day watches TV. And I'll read some of this here. A common situation that we have in most homes, not most homes, but a lot of homes today,
Right.
is dad sitting in front of the TV, drinking a beer and watching the Saturday football game. Maybe some friends or not. This one afternoon often includes many different chances for the child to absorb information, both bad and good.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you have a situation
I've read that chapter.
that they're in and they're learning. This scene in itself is not a bad thing. It is a perception of the adult behavior of the child that will have, in the end of the day, will create an issue for the future. At this stage, the children learn when the game is on, dad gets a beer and stops whatever he is doing and watches the game, and sometimes mom watches it with him.
Right.
That becomes an environmental situational learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what the child sees is dad watching the game, mom often getting the chips and dips and bringing the beer for dad. And maybe his friends as well. Also, many times after dad has had too much to drink, he may stop asking mom to bring him the beer, and starts demanding that she bring him the beer.
Right.
And when he does, he may grab her, push her, and tell her not to be so slow next time. You can see that in homes.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it happening today. The next morning, there will be an argument about the way dad acted and the things he did and said, and then two things can happen. Dad will become apologetic and say he will never do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Mom says if he doesn't stop, she will leave him because it's not the way to raise their children.
Right.
So mom's aware that the children are seeing that.
Right. Right.
Dad is not.
Uh-huh.
Or number two, dad will get defensive and tell mom it is the one thing he likes to do and it is only free time, and if she doesn't like it, she can leave because it is his house anyway and he pays the bills or something along those lines. So we got dad, again, without thinking, telling the children, this is how men act.
And in the next sentence or the next paragraph, you say that they both pay the bills.
Yep.
But he thinks or makes it seem like he's the only one paying the bill. And that was a control issue for me.
It is a control issue, and especially when men drink.
Right.
So, or not only men, but women too.
Right.
And mom, and I guess I must admit, I think more mothers are aware of the impact they have on their children than the dads do. And dads have got to change. We got to change dads sometimes a lot faster than women. We got about 30 seconds left on this, so we're gonna finish
We'll
this.
wrap it up.
We're gonna wrap this up on this one, and we need to look at how we are teaching our children in their environment, their situation, and their learning about what's going on in that environment.
We'll talk more about this on the next show.
Thank you very much.